They say that history is written by the victors. But what happens when the victors are too ashamed to tell the whole truth? We all remember the legend of the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae. We remember the glory, the defiance, the beautiful death. But that was just the beginning. The real end of that war was not glorious. It was a nightmare of thirst, superstition, and industrial slaughter that the Greeks tried to bury beneath their monuments. We are going to tell the story of the day the fragile Greek alliance faced the full, crushing weight of the Persian Empire. It is the story of a general who refused to fight while his men were dying, of a golden feast set for a dead man, and of a victory so bloody it poisoned the soul of a civilization. This is not a tale of heroes in white marble. This is the anatomy of a massacre. Join me as we wipe away the dust of 25 centuries to reveal the dark, beating heart of the classical age. So turn down the lights. Forget the legends. The ghosts are waiting to speak. Welcome to the slaughter at Plataea. Dawn breaks over the plain of Plataea, not with a shout, but with a shudder. It is August, 479 years before the Common Era, and the heat is already rising from the cracked earth of Boeotia. If you were standing there, among the trampled grass and the dry thistle, the first thing you would notice is not the sight of the armies, but the smell. It is a heavy, cloying scent that clings to the back of the throat. It is the smell of unwashed wool, of animal sweat, of wood smoke drifting from 10,000 cook fires, and beneath it all, the faint copper tang of old blood. Tens of thousands of men stand in the gray light. They are silent. They are staring across the river Asopus toward the north. In the distance, the Persian camp is waking up. It is a city of canvas and timber, a sprawling machine of empire that stretches as far as the eye can see. Its campfires are still glowing, thousands of orange eyes blinking out as the sun crests the mountains. The men standing on the southern ridge, the Greeks, are not the polished heroes of marble statuary. They are exhausted. They are covered in the dust of a summer campaign. Their armor is dull with grease and sweat. Many of them are refugees. The Athenians among them have seen their city burned twice in 2 years. They have slept in fields, in caves, on the decks of triremes. They have nothing left but the spear in their hand and the shield on their arm. And the Spartans? The Spartans stand apart. They are the iron core of this fragile line. But even they are not the men they were a year ago. They are haunted. When they look across that plain, they do not just see an enemy army. They see the ghosts of Thermopylae. They see the shadow of a king who marched out and never came back. This is not a story of inevitable victory. Standing on that ridge, looking at a Persian force that outnumbers them, with a cavalry that can move faster than thought, the Greeks do not feel like conquerors. They feel like men waiting for the end of the world. They are not unified by confidence. They are welded together by trauma. They are here because there is nowhere left to run. And just as the sun hits the peaks of Mount Cithaeron behind them, a runner arrives at the command tent. He is breathless, his legs caked in mud. He brings news from the rear, from the springs that supply the army's water. The news is quiet, but it spreads through the ranks like a sickness. The springs have been poisoned. The supply lines are cut. The waiting is over. The beast across the river is finally moving. To understand the terror of this moment, To understand why a poisoned spring could nearly break the spine of the greatest army Greece had ever assembled, we have to look back. We have to understand the ghosts that walked alongside these men. We have to go back to the pass at Thermopylae and the death of a king. The year before Plataea, the Persian king Xerxes had come to Greece to burn it. He brought the world with him, nations, languages, and armies swallowed by the Persian engine. And at a narrow pass called the Hot Gates, 300 Spartans and their allies stood in his way. We remember the legend. We remember the defiance. But history often forgets the mourning. When the news of Leonidas's death reached Sparta, it did not trigger a surge of patriotic glory. It triggered a crisis. In the high villages of Laconia, the mood was black. The king's body had been desecrated, his head cut off and impaled on a pike by Xerxes, an insult so profound it shook the Spartan worldview to its foundations. For the Spartan elders, the Gerousia, the sacrifice of Leonidas was a terrifying calculus. Yes, he had bought time. Yes, he had proven Spartan valor. But he had also lost a king and 300 of the state's finest warriors for a pass that ultimately fell. The Persian army had flowed over their bodies like water over a stone and flooded into central Greece. The aftermath of Thermopylae was a landscape of ash. Athens was evacuated. The great temples of the Acropolis were looted and torched. The statues of the gods were toppled. The refugees flooded into the Peloponnese, huddled behind the unfinished wall at the Isthmus of Corinth, looking north with terror. Arguments broke out between the city-states. The Athenians accused the Spartans of cowardice, of hiding behind their wall while Athens burned. The Spartans accused the Athenians of recklessness. The alliance was a fractured mirror, held together only by the terrifying reality of the Persian fleet. In Sparta, the loss of Leonidas left a vacuum. His son Pleistarchus was still a child, too young to hold a spear, let alone lead an army. The throne needed a protector. The army needed a voice. And so, the regency fell to a man who was not a king, but the cousin of the dead hero, a man named Pausanias. Pausanias is the enigma at the heart of this story. If Leonidas was the shield, Pausanias was the spear, sharp, dangerous, and prone to breaking. He was elevated to the supreme command of the Greek forces, a position of unimaginable weight. He was a man of the royal house, yes, but he had spent his life in the shadow of Leonidas. Now, suddenly, the fate of the entire Hellenic world rested on his shoulders. He was a man of deep, almost paralyzing piety. In the Spartan system, a general was half strategist, half priest. You did not march without the gods. You did not fight without a sign. Pausanias took this to an extreme. He was obsessed with omens. He would stare at the entrails of sacrificed goats for hours, looking for the favor of the divine, while his lieutenants paced nervously in the background. But he was also arrogant. He knew that Sparta was the only power capable of stopping the Persian infantry on open ground. He treated the other Greeks, the Athenians, the Corinthians, the Megarians, not as partners, but as unruly subordinates. He wore his authority like a heavy cloak. He was brilliant, ambitious, and deeply flawed. And as the summer of 479 approached, he found himself leading a coalition that hated him almost as much as they feared the Persians. Across the water, the Persian king Xerxes had seen enough. After his navy was battered at the Battle of Salamis, He had lost his appetite for the long, grinding war in the Greek mountains. He took the bulk of his army and went home to Asia, claiming victory because he had burned Athens. But he did not leave Greece free. He left a knife at its throat. He left his best general, Mardonius, and he left him with the elite of the imperial army, the immortals, the heavy cavalry, the seasoned veterans of a dozen campaigns. Mardonius is the dark mirror to Pausanias. If Pausanias was the reluctant heir, Mardonius was the architect of the war. It was Mardonius who had whispered in Xerxes' ear, urging the invasion. It was Mardonius who believed that Greece could be conquered, not just burned. He was a man of sophistication and brutality. He did not fear the Greeks. He studied them. He knew their politics better than they knew his. He knew that the Greek alliance was a fragile thing, held together by pride and fear. He believed that if he applied enough pressure, if he waited long enough, the Greeks would turn on each other. He set up his headquarters in Thessaly in the north and waited out the winter. He sent diplomats to Athens, offering them incredible terms, reparations, territory, equality, if they would only switch sides. The Athenians, starving and destitute, refused. So in the spring, Mardonius marched south again. He did not march to fight. He marched to punish. He reoccupied Athens, which was empty again. Its people fled to the islands. This time, Mardonius did not just burn the roofs. He dismantled the walls. He pulled down the remaining columns. He turned the city into a quarry. He wanted to show the Greeks that their defiance bought them nothing but dust. Refugees poured into the Greek camp at the isthmus, weeping, carrying the news of the second destruction. The pressure on Pausanias became unbearable. The Athenians sent an ultimatum to Sparta. March now. Fight Mardonius on the plains of Boeotia, or we will take our navy and leave for Italy, leaving Sparta to die alone. Pausanias looked at the omens. He looked at the sky. He looked at the desperate faces of his allies. And finally, he gave the order. The Spartan army, the finest killing machine in the ancient world, marched out in the dead of night. They moved in silence, a column of bronze and scarlet winding through the mountains, heading north toward the enemy. The grand ambition had begun. The two armies were moving toward a collision that would decide the future of the West. But as they converged on the plain of Plataea, the cracks in the alliance were already showing. The Greek camp was a place of impossible tension. Picture a temporary city thrown up on the foothills of Mount Cithaeron. It is a chaotic sprawl of tents, lean-tos, and weapon racks. There is no uniformity here. You have the Spartans, with their crimson cloaks and long hair, oiling their shields in silence. You have the Athenians, loud, argumentative, democratic, debating strategy around the fires. You have the Corinthians, wealthy and proud, the Megarians, stubborn and hardy, the Tegeans, who have an ancient blood feud with Sparta. Every decision is a battle. Every order is a negotiation. In the center of this chaos is the command tent of Pausanias. Inside, the air is thick with resentment. The war council is in session, and it is going badly. The issue is the battle line. In Greek warfare, where you stand in the phalanx matters. The right wing is the position of honor. It is the place where the commander stands, the place where the line is anchored. Sparta claims the right wing. This is non-negotiable. They are the hegemon. They are the professionals. But who takes the left? The left wing is the exposed flank. It is the position of danger. The Athenians claim it. citing their bravery at Marathon. The Tegeans claim it, citing ancient treaties and myths. The argument rages for hours. Men shout, slamming their hands on the rough-hewn tables. They recite genealogies of heroes dead for 300 years to justify why they should stand 10 feet to the left or right of a standard. It is absurd, and it is deadly serious. These men are about to die, and they are arguing about prestige. Pausanias watches them, his face impassive. He lets them scream. He knows that he needs all of them. He eventually rules in favor of Athens for the left wing, a decision that insults the Tegeans but keeps the navy happy. But the real problem is not the line. It is the ground. The Greeks have positioned themselves in the foothills on rough, rocky terrain. This is smart. It negates the Persian cavalry. A horse cannot charge effectively up a scree slope. But it also traps them. They are terrified to move down onto the flat plain of the Asopus River, where Mardonius is waiting. Mardonius knows this. He is camped across the river on the flat ground that favors his horses. He has built a stockade, a massive wooden fortress a mile square. He has stripped the local forests to build it. He is comfortable. He has food, he has water, and he has time. He watches the Greeks clinging to the mountainside like goats. He sees their fear. He smiles. He knows he doesn't have to charge them. He just has to make them thirsty. The psychological warfare begins on the third day. The sun is relentless. The armor of a hoplite weighs 60 pounds. The bronze greaves cook the shins. The breastplate traps the body heat until a man feels like he is being roasted alive. And water is scarce. The Greeks are relying on a series of springs and the passes through the mountains behind them for supply convoys. Mardonius, sitting on his horse across the river, signals his cavalry commander, Mecistius. Mecistius is a giant of a man, riding a Nicaean charger with a golden bit. He leads the Persian cavalry, archers on horseback who can hit a coin at a gallop. He does not order a full assault. He orders a raid. Imagine the sound first, a low rumble like thunder trapped in the earth. Then the dust cloud. The Greek sentries scream the warning, but the Persian horses are incredibly fast. They do not charge the shield wall. They sweep around the edges. They find the supply wagons plodding down the mountain passes. It is a massacre, but a specific kind of massacre. The Persians target the mules. They target the water carriers. They put arrows into the bellies of the pack animals. In minutes, hundreds of beasts are dead or dying, blocking the narrow mountain paths. The flour, the wine, the barley, it is all trampled into the bloody dust. Then the archers turn toward the Greek lines. They ride within bowshot, loose a volley, and wheel away before the heavy Greek infantry can even lower their spears. It is humiliating. The Greeks stand there, shields raised, sweating, powerless, while arrows rain down on them. Men fall, clutching their throats, their thighs. The cavalry laughs, shouting insults in a dozen languages, dancing their horses just out of reach. Pausanias watches from the high ground. He sees the supply column burning. He sees his men flinching under the missile fire. He realizes the trap he is in. He cannot attack the Persians without descending onto the plain, where those horses will tear his phalanx apart. But he cannot stay where he is because his army is beginning to starve. And the water, the precious water. The springs are being choked with mud and debris by Persian raiders. Men are starting to drink from stagnant puddles. Dysentery begins to whisper through the camp. This is the reality of ancient war. It is not glorious charges, it is waiting, it is thirst. It is the sound of flies buzzing over the carcasses of mules. Pausanias realizes that Mardonius is not trying to beat him. He is trying to dissolve him. He is trying to make the misery so great that the Athenians or the Corinthians simply pack up and go home.
The tension in the Greek camp snaps. A new plan is formed. They cannot stay here. They must move. But to move in the face of the enemy is the most dangerous maneuver in warfare. If they turn their backs, the cavalry will strike. They have to move at night. The plan is complex. The entire army, nearly 100,000 men, will shift positions under the cover of darkness. They will withdraw toward the city of Plataea to a place called the Island, where there is fresh water and better protection from the horses. It is a sound plan on paper, but an army of that size, speaking different dialects, terrified, thirsty, and exhausted, moving in the pitch black over broken terrain, it is a recipe for disaster. As the sun sets on that terrible day, the fires are banked low. Orders are whispered down the line. Pack your kit. Silence. Follow the man in front of you.
But as the moon rises, the unity of the Greeks begins to unravel. The heavy hoplites stumble in the dark. Units lose contact with one another. The dust kicked up by thousands of feet creates a choking fog. One Spartan commander, a man named Amphiaratus, refuses to move. He stands in the dark, shouting at Pausanias. He calls the retreat shameful. He refuses to turn his back on the enemy. He picks up a heavy rock with both hands and throws it at Pausanias's feet. "With this pebble," he roars, "I cast my vote against fleeing from the strangers." Pausanias is furious. He is the regent. He is the commander. And here is his own officer, in the middle of a delicate night maneuver, debating the philosophy of courage, while the Persian wolves are sleeping a mile away. The argument drags on. Valuable time is lost. The sky begins to lighten in the east. The gray fingers of dawn are reaching over the mountains. The maneuver has failed. The Greek army is not safe in its new position. It is scattered. The center has retreated too far, terrified, running all the way to the walls of Plataea. The Athenians are lost in the mist on the left, and the Spartans? The Spartans are still standing there, arguing, caught in the open as the sun comes up. Across the river, a Persian scout rubs his eyes. He looks at the Greek ridge. It is empty. He looks closer. He sees the dust trails. He sees the isolated pockets of Greeks, confused and separated. He gallops to Mardonius's tent. The general emerges, wrapping a robe around himself. He looks out at the chaotic scene. He sees the Spartans isolated. He sees the Athenians disconnected. He sees an army that has broken itself without him lifting a finger. Mardonius laughs. It is a dry, cold sound. He believes the Greeks are fleeing. He believes their courage has finally cracked. "They are running," he says to his commanders. "Look at them. They are running away." He does not wait for the omens. He does not form the battle line. He acts on instinct. He orders the pursuit. "Bring me my horse," he commands. "Today we finish what Xerxes began." The trumpet sounds in the Persian camp, a brazen, harsh note that cuts through the morning air. The gates of the stockade swing open, and the machine of empire begins to roll forward. The grand ambition is over. The reality of the slaughter is about to begin. The Greeks are caught in the open, divided, thirsty, and leaderless. And thundering toward them is the finest cavalry in the world, followed by an ocean of infantry. Pausanias stands on the ridge, the sun in his eyes, the argument with his subordinate forgotten. He watches the horizon turn dark with enemies. He turns to his augur, the priest standing beside him with the sacrificial knife. "Kill the goat," Pausanias says. "Ask the gods if we are to die today."
The priest cuts the animal's throat. The blood spills onto the dry earth. They stare at the liver, looking for a sign. But the gods are silent, and the Persians are coming. The transition from the tension of the camp to the immediacy of the battlefield requires us to slow down even further. We need to inhabit the space between the decision and the consequence. Imagine the perspective of a common Spartan soldier, a hoplite. Let's call him Brasidas. He is not a king or a general. He is a farmer from the Eurotas Valley. He has been standing in formation for hours. His shield, the aspis, is a 3-foot circle of bronze and wood. It weighs nearly 20 pounds. He rests the rim on his knee to save his arm strength. He hears the argument between Pausanias and Amompharetus, but he does not look. Discipline forbids it. He stares at the back of the helmet of the man in front of him. He sees the horsehair crest trembling in the wind. He smells the sour breath of the man next to him. When the sun comes up and reveals their isolation, Brasidas feels a cold knot in his stomach. He knows what a phalanx needs to survive. It needs secure flanks. It needs unity. Right now they have neither. They are a truncated block of men, perhaps 10,000 strong, floating in a sea of hostility. To their left, there is a gap of nearly a mile before the next Greek unit. To their right, the rough ground slopes down to the river, and pouring across that river is a nightmare. It starts with the arrows. The Persian infantry, the Sparabara, are not like the Greeks. They do not fight hand to hand if they can help it. They carry large wicker shields and powerful bows. They advance to within 200 yards, plant their shields in the ground to form a wall, and begin to shoot. It is not a volley, it is a rainstorm. The sky literally darkens. The sound is like hail hitting a tin roof, clack, 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 as thousands of bronze-tipped arrows strike the Spartan shields. "Hold!" the officers bellow. "Hold the line!" Brasidas crouches beneath his shield. He feels the impacts shuddering through the wood. He hears a grunt, then a scream, as an arrow finds the gap between a helmet and a breastplate. A man in the second rank goes down, thrashing. The file closes up instantly. You step over the wounded. You do not look down. This is the agony of the Spartan discipline. They are trained to close with the enemy, to smash them with weight and spear. But Pausanias will not give the order to advance. Why? Because the omens are bad. This is the most terrifying moment of the battle. For nearly an hour, the Spartans stand under a withering hail of missiles, taking casualties, while their commander hacks open goat after goat, looking for a favorable sign from the gods. The discipline is superhuman. Men are dying in rows, and yet the line does not waver. They stand like statues of bronze, bleeding, waiting for the word. Pausanias is weeping. The ancient texts tell us this. He lifts his face to the temple of Hera, visible on the ridge behind them. He screams a prayer.
He begs the goddess not to let the Spartans die in shame, unable to strike back. It is a moment of total vulnerability. The great Spartan war machine is paralyzed by superstition. Meanwhile, on the far left, the Athenians are fighting their own desperate battle. They are cut off from the Spartans. They are not facing the Persians, but the Medadized Greeks, the Thebans and Thessalians who have sided with the invader. This is a civil war within a war, Greek facing Greek. Same armor, same tactics, same language. The hatred here is personal. The Thebans hate the Athenians with a passion that transcends politics. They fight with a grim, grinding ferocity. There are no arrows here. It is the othismos, the shoving match. Shield against shield, weight against weight, the groaning of wood and the snapping of bone. The Athenians are crying out for help, sending runners to Pausanias. "We are pressed! We are dying! Send aid!" But Pausanias cannot move. He is trapped in his religious paralysis. Mardonius sees the Spartans standing still. He interprets this as fear. He thinks they are frozen with terror. He orders his elite infantry, the Immortals, to advance. He wants to crush them while they are paralyzed. He rides a white horse. He wears a tunic of purple woven with gold. He looks like a god of war. He is shouting encouragement to his men. He is so close that the Spartans can see his face. The Persian infantry surges forward, discarding their bows, drawing their short swords and axes. They rush up the slope, screaming their war cries. They are confident. They have the numbers. They have the momentum. And then the sign comes. Perhaps the light changed. Perhaps the entrails of the final victim were clear. Or perhaps Pausanias simply realized that if he waited 10 seconds longer, he would have no army left. He stands up. He raises his staff. The order ripples down the line. It is not a complex command. It is a single word roared by the officers, echoed by 10,000 throats. Attack! The statue comes to life. The Spartan phalanx does not run. It steps. Step. 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 The rhythm is set by the flutes playing in the rear. It is an eerie, mechanical sound. The wall of bronze lowers. The spears, 8 feet of ash wood tipped with iron, level out. The Persians are sprinting uphill, loose, chaotic, individual warriors seeking glory. The Spartans are moving as one organism. The collision is sickening. The sound is heard miles away in the city of Plataea. It is the sound of a sledgehammer hitting a wall of meat. The Persian short swords and wicker shields are useless against the heavy hoplite armor. The Spartans engage in close quarters. They use their shields to smash faces, their spears to pierce the unarmored torsos of the enemy. Brasidas, our imaginary hoplite, is no longer thinking. He is a piston. Stab, recover, step. Stab, recover, step. The frustration of the last hour, the terror of the arrows, the thirst, the anger, it all pours out into the violence. The Persians are brave. They grab the Spartan spears with their bare hands and try to snap them. They throw themselves onto the shield wall, trying to drag it down by weight. But they are fighting a machine. The Spartans push them back. Step by bloody step, they grind the Persian army back down the slope toward the river. But Mardonius is not beaten yet. He is in the thick of the fighting, surrounded by his bodyguard of 1,000 elite warriors. As long as he stands, the Persian army holds. He is fighting with a spear, cutting down Spartans, rallying his men. The battle hangs in the balance. The sheer mass of the Persian army is threatening to envelop the small Spartan force. If Mardonius can break the line here, the war is over. Greece falls.
It comes down to a moment of chance. A Spartan soldier named Amnestus, a name that means unforgettable, is fighting in the front rank. He is not a hero of legend. He is just a man in the right place. He sees the general on the white horse. He sees the purple tunic. Amnestus does not duel him. This is not the Iliad. There are no speeches. Amnestus picks up a rock, not a pebble, but a heavy stone from the rocky ground of Cathiron. Or perhaps he simply heaves his shield. The accounts vary, but the result is the same. He strikes Mardonius. The blow hits the Persian commander in the head. It crushes his skull. Mardonius falls from his white horse. He hits the dust, dead before he lands. For a heartbeat, the battlefield freezes. The Persians see their golden general fall. They see the empty saddle. And then the panic sets in. It starts as a ripple, then a wave, then a collapse. The Persian courage evokes a specific kind of structure, hierarchical, top-down. When the head is cut off, the body dies. Without Mardonius, there is no plan, there is no pay, there is no victory. The Persians turn, they drop their shields, they run, and now the slaughter begins. The Spartans do not cheer, they advance. They pursue the fleeing enemy toward the wooden stockade across the river. The discipline dissolves into a hunt. On the left, the Athenians have broken the Thebans. The field is covered in bodies. The air is thick with dust and screams. The Greeks converge on the Persian camp. The wooden walls that Mardonius built to protect his army now become a trap. Tens of thousands of Persians are squeezed inside, terrified, crushing each other against the gates. The Athenians arrive with their heavy tools. They breach the walls. What happens next is not war. It is extermination. The pent-up rage of 2 years of fear, of burning cities, of desecrated temples is unleashed. The Greeks do not take prisoners. They kill everything that moves. They kill the soldiers. They kill the servants. They kill the cooks, the scribes, the concubines. The ancient historians tell us that out of nearly 300,000 Persians, an exaggeration surely, but the scale was massive, only a fraction escaped. The carnage inside the camp is so great that the Greeks have to climb over piles of bodies to reach the tents. It is a frenzy of bloodlust. It is the ugliest moment of the war and the most decisive. By late afternoon, the silence returns, but it is a different kind of silence than the morning. It is the silence of the grave. Pausanias stands in the center of the Persian camp. He is covered in blood and dust. His men are looting the tents, dragging out chests of gold, silver bowls, tapestries of unimaginable worth. They are stripping the dead, fighting over golden bracelets and jeweled daggers. Pausanias walks to the tent of Mardonius. It is a palace of silk. He sees the silver-footed throne where the general sat. He sees the banquet tables set for a victory feast that never happened. He orders his cooks to prepare a Spartan meal, a simple black broth and barley bread. Then he points to the Persian feast, the roasted meats, the sweet wines, the delicate cakes. He calls his commanders together. He laughs. "Look at the folly of this man," Pausanias says, gesturing to the dead body of Mardonius nearby.
He came all the way here to rob us of our poverty, while having all of this. It is a famous line. It is witty. It is Spartan.
But as the sun sets on the carnage of Plataea, the reality is far more complex than a witty aphorism. The Greeks have won. They have slaughtered the beast. They have saved their civilization. But as they stand there counting the gold, arguing over who fought best, looking with suspicion at their neighbors, the seeds of the next war are already being sown. The enemy is dead. Now the Greeks are left alone with each other, and the ghosts of Thermopylae are watching. They have been avenged, but blood calls for blood, and the cycle has only just begun. To understand how a massacre happens, you must first understand the waiting. History books often compress time. They turn days of misery into a single sentence. They say, the armies faced each other for 10 days. It sounds tactical. It sounds organized. But for the men on the ground, those 10 days were not a tactic. They were a slow, grinding decomposition of the soul. Imagine the heat of a Greek August. It is a physical weight, a hammer that strikes the earth at dawn and does not lift until dusk. The air shimmers over the rocky foothills of Cithaeron. The cicadas are screaming in the scrub oak, a relentless, sawing noise that burrows into the ear and stays there. There are 110,000 men in the Greek camp. They are crowded onto a ridge that is too small for them. There is no sanitation. There are no tents for the common soldiers. They sleep on the hard ground, wrapped in their cloaks, huddled against the wind that whips down from the peaks. By the 4th day, the smell is inescapable. It is the stench of latrines dug too shallow and filled too fast. It is the smell of unwashed bodies, of garlic and stale wine, of rotting food scraps trampled into the dirt. The flies are everywhere. They crawl into the eyes, the nose, the corners of the mouth. They settle on the cuts and scrapes that every soldier carries. Boredom becomes a poison. Men sharpen their swords until the edges are razor thin. Then they sharpen them again. They count the rivets on their shields. They gamble with knuckle bones, betting their rations, their share of future loot, even their armor. Arguments flare up over nothing, a spilled water skin, a shadow cast over a sleeping spot. The alliance of city-states, fragile to begin with, begins to cook in the sun. The Athenians look at the Spartans with suspicion. They whisper that the Spartans are hoarding the best food. The Spartans look at the Athenians with contempt. They see them as undisciplined, loud, prone to panic. The Corinthians and Megarians feel ignored, caught between two giants who treat them like servants. And across the river Asopus, the Persians are watching. Their camp is a different world. Mardonius has established a city of luxury in the middle of a war zone. The wind carries the scent of roasting lamb and burning cedar from the Persian lines. At night, the Greeks can hear music, flutes, drums, the strange, undulating melodies of the East. It is a psychological torment. The Persians are showing them, we are comfortable, we are fed, we can wait forever. Mardonius is not idle. He is playing a game of nerves. Every day he sends his cavalry to the river's edge. They do not cross in force. They just trot their horses back and forth, kicking up dust, shouting insults. They ride up to the very limit of bowshot, loose a single arrow high into the air, and laugh as the Greeks flinch. They call the Greeks women. They call them beggars.
They ask where their famous King Leonidas is now. It is a deliberate erosion of dignity. Mardonius knows that a hoplite army is built on pride. If you can make them feel small, if you can make them feel foolish, the phalanx will crack before the first spear is thrown. The strain falls heaviest on one man, Pausanias. In the command tent, the air is thick with incense. Pausanias is not sleeping. His eyes are rimmed with red. He is the regent of Sparta, the commander of the entire Hellenic force, but he is paralyzed. To the modern mind, his inaction looks like indecision. Why not attack? Why not move? But Pausanias is operating under a set of rules that are as rigid as iron. He is a Spartan general, which means he is a servant of the gods first and a soldier second. Every morning, before the sun clears the mountains, Pausanias performs the sphagia. The victim is usually a goat. The animal is brought forward, its legs bound. The priest, the mantis, stands ready with a bronze knife. The army watches. The throat is cut. The blood splashes onto the ground. And then the examination begins. The priest opens the carcass and studies the liver. He looks for the lobes, the color, the texture. If the liver is discolored, if a lobe is missing, if the gallbladder is swollen, it is a sign. The gods are saying, "Do not move." For 8 days, the signs are bad. Imagine the pressure. You have 100,000 angry, thirsty, terrified men looking at you. You have the enemy mocking you from across the river, and you are staring at a piece of raw meat, waiting for permission to save your country. His subordinates are furious. They come to him, demanding orders. "The men are breaking," they say. "The water is running low. We must fight or we must leave." Pausanias shakes his head. "The gods are silent," he says. "We wait." Is it superstition, or is it strategy? Pausanias knows that if he crosses the river onto the flat plain, the Persian cavalry will encircle him. He needs Mardonius to attack him. He needs the Persians to come up the slope, where their horses are useless and their numbers don't matter. So he uses the gods as a shield. He delays. He waits. He lets the army rot in the sun, hoping that Mardonius will lose patience first. But Mardonius is clever. He does not take the bait. Instead, he tightens the noose. On the 8th night, the crisis shifts from boredom to survival. The Greek army relies on the Gargaphia spring, a natural water source on the right flank of their position. It is the heartbeat of the army. Without it, the men and the pack animals die. Mardonius sends his cavalry under the cover of darkness. They do not attack the camp. They attack the water. They ride to the spring. They do not just drink from it. They destroy it. They shovel mud and filth into the basin. They trample the banks until the clear water turns into a thick brown sludge. They slaughter the Greek water carriers who are filling their jars, leaving their bodies to rot in the muck. When the sun rises on the 9th day, the news spreads through the ranks like a grass fire. The water is gone. The convoys bringing supplies from the mountain passes in the rear have been cut off by Persian raiders. The army is now isolated. They have no food coming in. They have no clean water. They are baking on a rock in the middle of summer. The stalemate is broken, not by a charge, but by thirst. Pausanias calls a war council. The mood is venomous. The Athenian generals are shouting. They are exposed on the lower ground, closest to the enemy, and they feel abandoned. They demand a change in the line.
And here we see the bizarre ritualistic nature of this war. In the middle of a logistical collapse, the generals begin to argue about where they are standing. The Persians have aligned their forces based on intelligence. Mardonius has placed his native Persian troops, the best of the best, opposite the Spartans on the right wing. He has placed his Greek allies, the Thebans and Thessalians, opposite the Athenians on the left. Pausanias, realizing this, proposes a switch. He asks the Athenians to move to the right wing to face the Persians, while the Spartans move to the left to face the Greek allies. His reasoning is sound, if embarrassing. "You Athenians," he says, "have beaten the Persians before, at Marathon. You know how they fight. We Spartans have only fought them at Thermopylae, where we died. It is better for you to face the Mede."
The Athenians agree. In the middle of the day, under the eyes of the enemy, the two great wings of the army begin to shuffle past each other. Thousands of men, miles of marching, swapping places. Mardonius watches this from his high tower. He sees the dust. He understands what is happening. He laughs. He orders his own army to shift. He moves the Persians to his right, so they are facing the Spartans again. Pausanias sees this counter-move. He realizes he has been checkmated. He orders the army to shift back to their original positions. It is a farce. The entire day is spent marching back and forth, choking on dust, accomplishing nothing. The soldiers are exhausted. They are thirsty. They are losing faith in their leaders. To the common soldier, it looks like the generals have lost their minds. By sunset, the army is back where it started, but weaker. The morale is shattered. The water is gone. The decision is made. They cannot stay here. They must retreat. Not a retreat home, a tactical withdrawal. They will move at night to a position closer to the city of Plataea, a place called the Island, where the river splits and forms a natural defensive moat. There they will have water and protection from the cavalry. The plan is precise. At the second watch of the night, the army will break camp. The center will move first, followed by the wings. They will march in silence. They will regroup at dawn. But as any soldier knows, a plan is just a list of things that will go wrong. Night falls. The moon is obscured by heavy clouds. The darkness is absolute. The fires are banked low to hide the movement. The order is given. "Move!" And instantly the machine breaks. The center of the Greek army, the contingents from the smaller city-states, the Corinthians, the Megarians, they are terrified. They have been under missile fire for days. They are thirsty and spooked. When they receive the order to pull back, they do not march to the designated position. They run. They move too fast, too far. They bypass the island entirely. They keep going until they reach the walls of Plataea, miles away from the battle line. They scatter into the temple grounds, dropping their shields, hiding in the dark. In 1 hour, the Greek army has lost its center. There is now a gaping hole in the line, miles wide. On the left, the Athenians are moving with more discipline, but they are lost. The terrain is treacherous, ravines, thorn bushes, dry creek beds. They are shouting whispers into the dark, trying to keep contact, but they are drifting off course. And on the right, the Spartans. The Spartans are not moving at all. This is the moment that nearly destroys Greece. It is the story of the rock. Pausanias issues the order to march. The captains of the Spartan companies, the Lokoi, begin to rally their men. But one captain stands fast. His name is Amampharitus. He commands the Pitonate Battalion, an elite unit of pure-blooded Spartans. Amampharitus is a man of the old school. He does not understand tactical withdrawal. He understands only two directions, forward and dead. He confronts Pausanias in the dark. The regent is mounted, anxious, watching the sky for the first hint of dawn. Amampharitus stands before the horse, planting his spear in the ground. "I will not retreat," he says. "I will not bring shame upon Sparta. I will not turn my back on the strangers." Pausanias tries to reason with him. He explains the plan. He explains the water. He explains that this is a maneuver, not a flight. Amampharitus is not listening. He is mad with honor. He picks up a heavy stone with both hands, a jagged piece of limestone. He throws it at Pausanias's feet. It lands with a heavy thud. "With this pebble," he roars, "I cast my vote against fleeing from the enemy." It is a moment of insanity. The entire army is waiting. The Athenians are sending runners asking why the Spartans haven't moved. The center is gone. The sun is coming. And the supreme commander is arguing with a subordinate about the definition of cowardice. The argument rages for hours. The other Spartan officers plead with Amampharitus. They call him a fool. They tell him he is destroying the army. He crosses his arms and refuses to budge. Finally, the sky begins to turn gray. The birds begin to sing. The cover of darkness is gone. Pausanias makes a desperate choice. He cannot stay, and he cannot kill his own officer. He orders the rest of the Spartan army to march, leaving Amampharitus and his battalion behind. He hopes that when Amampharitus sees his comrades leaving, his fear of being left alone will outweigh his pride. The Spartan column begins to move, lumbering away toward the hills. They march about half a mile, then halt. Pausanias looks back. He is waiting for the stubborn captain. And sure enough, slowly, sullenly, the Pitonate battalion begins to follow. They are walking alone, separated from the main force, a vulnerable island of bronze, moving across the landscape. But it is too late. The sun has crested the mountains. The rays of light flood the plain of Asopus, and the Persians wake up. Mardonius steps out of his tent. He expects to see the Greek ridge lined with shields. Instead, he sees emptiness. He blinks. He climbs the watchtower. He scans the horizon. He sees the Greeks, but he does not see an army. He sees a mess. He sees the Greek center miles away, huddled near the walls of Plataea. He sees the Athenians wandering in the lowlands, obscured by hillocks. And he sees the Spartans, the feared Spartans, split into two groups, retreating with their backs turned. To Mardonius, this does not look like a maneuver. It looks like a rout. "They are fleeing," he whispers. The realization hits him like a drug. The Spartans are running away. His commanders gather around him. Artabazus, a cautious general who has respected the Greeks from the beginning, urges restraint. "It could be a trap," he warns. "Let them go. If they leave, we win." But Mardonius is done with caution. He is done with waiting. He sees the backs of his enemies. He sees the glory that was promised to him. He sees the face of Xerxes smiling upon him. Hubris is not just pride. It is a blindness. It is the belief that you can dictate reality. Mardonius believes he has already won. "Deploy the cavalry!" he screams. "Every horse, every rider! Cut them down before they reach the high ground!" He does not stop there. He orders the infantry to follow, but he does not form them into a battle line. He orders a general pursuit. "Get them!" is the command. The discipline of the Persian army, maintained for so long, snaps. They pour out of the camp gates not as a formation, but as a mob. They are shouting, cheering, jostling each other to be the first to catch a Spartan. It is a stampede of predators chasing wounded game. The sound of the Persian advance is like a landslide. The thunder of hooves, the clashing of weapons, the screaming of thousands of men. Pausanias hears it. He is standing with the main Spartan force near the temple of Demeter. He turns around. He sees the horizon turning black. The Persian cavalry is closing the distance with terrifying speed. The dust cloud they kick up is so thick it looks like a forest fire. He looks for the Athenians. They are too far away, engaged with the Thebans who have also surged forward. He looks for the center. They are gone. He is alone. 5,000 Spartans and their Tegean allies against the world. He orders the men to turn and form the phalanx. The command is automatic. Turn, lock shields, level spears. But the Persians are too fast. Before the line is fully set, the first wave of cavalry hits them. It is not a collision of bodies yet, it is the arrows. The Persian cavalry sweeps past, discharging volley after volley. Then the Persian infantry arrives. They run up the slope, plant their wicker shields, the spara, in the ground, and form a wall. Behind this wall, thousands of archers begin to loose their shafts. The sky turns dark. The arrows fall like rain. And here we reach the breaking point. The Spartans are taking casualties. Men are dropping in the ranks. An arrow takes a man in the eye, another in the throat. The shields are heavy with the weight of embedded shafts. The men are screaming to advance. "Let us fight!" they roar. "Give the order!" But Pausanias stands behind the line, near the temple. He is holding a goat. He sacrifices it. The priest inspects the liver. "No sign," the priest says. "The gods are not with us." The arrows continue to fall. Thud, thud, thud. Pausanias calls for another goat. He cuts its throat. He looks at the blood. No sign. The discipline required to stand there is unimaginable. To stand still while you are being murdered from a distance. To trust your commander when he seems insane. The Tegeans, the allies standing next to the Spartans, cannot take it anymore. They begin to surge forward. Pausanias screams at them to hold. He looks up at the sky. He raises his hands to the temple of Hera on the ridge above. Tears are streaming down his face into his beard. He ignores the goats now. He speaks directly to the goddess. "Hera!" he screams, his voice cracking over the roar of the battle. "If we are to die, let us die with our weapons in our hands. Do not let us die in shame. Give us the sign." The arrows are drumming on the shields like a storm. The Persian infantry is emboldened. They are dropping their bows, drawing their axes, sensing the kill. They think the Spartans are cowards. They think the legends were lies. They rush forward to dismantle the wall of bronze. Pausanias looks down. Perhaps the light catches the blood on the knife. Perhaps the wind shifts. Perhaps he simply decides that the gods have taken enough. The priest nods. "The signs," the priest whispers. "They are good." Pausanias lowers his hands. He picks up a stone. He turns to the phalanx. The men are vibrating with rage. They are coiled springs compressed to the point of exploding. Pausanias nods. The trumpet sounds, a single clear note that cuts through the chaos. The order is given. The shield wall does not just move, it erupts. The explosion of the Spartan line is not a shout, it is a geological event. For hours these men have been statues, locked in a paralysis of superstition, taking wounds without returning them. They have been compressed by discipline and rage until they are harder than the bronze they wear. When the trumpet finally sounds, when the energy is released, it does not come out as a charge, it comes out as a collision. The distance between the two armies is short, a few hundred yards of scrub and rock. The Spartans close it in silence, save for the rhythmic tramping of feet and the piping of the flutes. The Persians see them coming. They drop their bows. They know that the time for arrows is over. They draw their akinakis, short, dagger-like swords, and brace their wicker shields. The impact of the two lines is the loudest sound ever heard in human history up to that moment. It is the sound of metal smashing into wood, of bronze cuirasses grinding against iron scales, of thousands of lungs expelling air at the same instant. The front ranks of the Persian army do not just fall, they are disintegrated. The Spartan shield, the aspis, is a heavy, concave weapon. When driven by the shoulder of a man who has trained for this since he was 7 years old, it hits with the force of a battering ram. The Persian wicker shields shatter. The Spartans step into the wreckage, stabbing over the rims with their spears. They aim for the face, the throat, the groin. But the Persians do not run. This is the tragedy and the horror of Plataea. The Persians are not cowards. They are the masters of Asia. They have conquered the known world from India to Egypt. They are brave men fighting for their king. They throw themselves at the wall of bronze. They grab the Spartan spears with their bare hands, trying to snap the ash-wood shafts. They dive under the shields, trying to hamstring the Greeks with their knives. But courage cannot overcome physics. The Persians are wearing cloth tunics, perhaps some scale armor on their chests. The Spartans are encased in bronze from chin to knee. It is a battle between a hammer and a vase. The Spartans are invulnerable to the light Persian weapons, while every Spartan thrust finds soft flesh. The ground becomes slippery. The dust turns to mud. The front line is a meat grinder. The Spartans push. Othismos, the shove. The rear ranks lean into the men in front of them, adding their weight to the press. The Persian line begins to bend. It begins to bow backward. And yet, it holds. It holds because of one man. Mardonius is not watching from a tower. He is in the center of the killing zone. He rides his white Nicaean charger, a beast taller and stronger than any Greek horse. He is surrounded by his bodyguard, the 1,000 immortals. These are not conscripts, they are the nobility of Persia, men who have sworn to die for him. Mardonius is fighting like a hero from the Iliad. He is a throwback to an older age of warfare, where the general proves his right to command by the number of men he kills personally. He is distinct, visible, glorious. His purple tunic is a beacon in the dust. He swings a sword, cutting down Spartan after Spartan. Where Mardonius fights, the Persians are winning. The immortals are heavier than the regular infantry. They manage to hold the Spartans back. They create a pocket of resistance that threatens to stall the Greek advance. For a moment, the battle hangs suspended. If Mardonius can break the Spartan center, if he can kill enough of their officers, the phalanx might shatter. The history of the West balances on the edge of a sword. But the classical age has no room for heroes. The classical age is the age of the machine. And the machine has no respect for glory. A Spartan soldier named Amnestus is fighting in the rank. He is covered in sweat and the blood of others. He is tired. He is not looking for a duel. He is looking for a way to end this. He sees the man on the horse. He sees the gold. He sees the target. He does not challenge Mardonius. He does not shout his lineage. Amnestus looks down at the rocky earth of Citharon. He picks up a stone. It is a heavy, jagged thing, churned up by the trampling feet. He heaves it. It is an unceremonious act. It is ugly. There is no artistry in it. The stone flies through the air, bypassing the expensive armor, bypassing the skill of the swordsman. It strikes Mardonius on the side of the head. The sound is a wet crunch. The impact crushes the skull. The helmet caves in. The great general, the cousin of the King of Kings, the burner of Athens, goes limp. He slides from the saddle of his white horse and falls into the bloody mud. He is dead before he hits the ground. The effect is instantaneous. The immortals around him freeze. They look at the empty saddle. They look at the body of their leader, now just another obstacle in the dirt. The spell breaks.
The structure of the Persian army is vertical. It relies on the charisma and authority of the leader. When the leader dies, the contract is void. The immortals mourn. They fight to protect the body, and they die to the last man surrounding their fallen lord. But for the rest of the army, the levies, the conscripts, the subject nations, the death of Mardonius is the signal to survive. Artabazus, the second in command who had advised against the battle, sees the horse fall. He does not order a counterattack. He does not try to rally the troops. He turns his division around, 40,000 men who haven't even drawn their swords, and marches them away. He heads north, toward the Hellespont, toward home. He leaves the rest of the army to die. Panic is a contagion. It moves faster than a horse. The Persian infantry drops their wicker shields. They turn their backs. And that is when the battle becomes a slaughter. A phalanx is slow moving forward, but it is a terrifying pursuit engine. The Spartans step over the bodies of the immortals and begin to hunt. They stab into the backs of the fleeing men. The iconic dory spears work like skewers. The Persians run toward the only safety they know, the great wooden stockade they built across the river. It is a mile square, with walls of thick timber and towers for archers. It was meant to be their fortress. Now it will be their tomb. Tens of thousands of terrified men funnel into the gates. They crush each other in the entrance. They scramble up the ladders. They pack into the enclosure until there is no room to move, no room to breathe. They lock the gates. They wait. The Spartans arrive at the walls, but here the Spartan machine stalls. Spartans are warriors, not engineers. They do not know how to conduct a siege. They stand at the base of the wooden walls, poking at the timbers with their spears, frustrated, taking fire from the towers above. They cannot get in. They have to wait for the Athenians. On the left wing, the battle has been different. It has been uglier. While the Spartans were grinding down the Persians, the Athenians were fighting the Medizing Greeks, the Boeotians, the Locrians, the Malians.
This was not a clash of cultures. It was a civil war. The worst of the fighting was between the Athenians and the Thebans. These two cities despise each other. They are neighbors, rivals, and now enemies. The Theban aristocracy, the sacred band of sworn lovers and warriors, fights with a desperate, bitter ferocity. They are not fighting for pay. They are fighting because if they lose, they know Athens will destroy their city. The ground where the Athenians fight is slick with Greek blood. There is no quarter asked or given. It is a wrestling match to the death. The Athenians, driven by the memory of their burning city, fight like demons. They slowly, painfully push the Thebans back. 300 of the noblest Theban youth die where they stand, refusing to retreat. But eventually the Theban line breaks. They do not run to the stockade. They run to Thebes, to the safety of their own walls. The Athenians do not pursue them. They have work to do. They hear the noise from the river. They see the Spartans stalled at the stockade. The Athenian contingent runs across the battlefield. They bring with them the skills of a naval power, a city of builders. They look at the wooden wall. They do not see an obstacle. They see a problem to be solved. They attack the wall with axes, with ropes, with their bare hands. They find a weak section. They climb. They tear down the timbers. A breach is opened. The Spartans give a roar. They have been waiting. They pour through the gap like a flood of red iron. What happens inside the stockade is not recorded in the annals of heroic deeds. It is recorded in the nightmares of the survivors. The Persians are trapped. There are too many of them. They are pressed so tightly together that many cannot even lift their arms to surrender. They are a helpless mass of humanity. The Greeks go feral. The frustration of the campaign, the hunger, the thirst, the fear of the last 10 days, it all converts into kinetic energy. They do not just kill, they butcher. They hack into the crowd. It is efficient, industrial, and merciless. Men beg for their lives in languages the Greeks do not understand. They hold up gold, jewels, anything to buy a moment of breath. The Greeks do not want gold, not yet. They want blood. The killing lasts for hours. It continues until the Greek arms are too tired to lift the swords. It continues until the ground inside the stockade is a swamp of gore that reaches the ankles. Herodotus, the historian, claims that out of the hundreds of thousands who entered the camp, only 3,000 were left alive. Even if he is lying, even if he is exaggerating by half, the scale is apocalyptic. It is the wiping out of a generation of Asian manpower. The sun begins to set. The screaming slowly dies down, replaced by the low moaning of the wounded and the buzz of 1 billion flies. The Greeks stand amidst the carnage, heaving, covered in a crust of dried blood. They look at each other. They look at what they have done. The adrenaline begins to fade, replaced by a strange, hollow exhaustion. The beast is dead. The machine of the empire has been dismantled, piece by piece, bone by bone. But as the silence returns to the plain of Plataea, a new sound begins to emerge. It is the sound of wood splintering, of chests being pried open, of fabric being torn. The looting begins. The camp of Mardonius is a treasure house. The Persians brought their entire court with them. The Greeks, men who grew up in rocky villages, men who eat black broth and sleep on reeds, suddenly find themselves standing in the middle of unimaginable wealth. They find tents made of silk, embroidered with gold thread. They find bowls of solid silver, engraved with lions and griffins. They find chests filled with derricks, the golden coinage of the empire. They find bracelets, necklaces, jeweled daggers. They find herds of camels, horses, and concubines. Pausanias orders the helots, the Spartan serfs, to collect the treasure into a great pile so it can be divided properly. But even the discipline of Sparta strains under this temptation. Men steal. They hide gold in their tunics. They swallow gems. The Aeginetans, the merchant sailors of the alliance, buy gold from the ignorant helots for pennies, telling them it is merely brass. The unity of the phalanx dissolves into the greed of the individual. Pausanias walks through this scene of chaotic avarice. He makes his way to the center of the camp, to the personal pavilion of Mardonius. It is left standing amidst the ruin. It is a structure of spectacular beauty, hung with colorful tapestries, smelling of frankincense. Inside, the Persian cooks, who survived the slaughter by hiding, have prepared the evening meal that Mardonius was expecting to eat. The table is set. There are couches covered in purple dyes. There are gold platters piled high with roasted meats, exotic birds, sweet cakes, honey, and wine in silver craters. Pausanias stands there, still wearing his blood-spattered armor. He looks at the feast. He looks at the dead body of Mardonius, which has been dragged nearby. He calls his commanders. He calls the Spartan captains. "Make me a Spartan dinner," he orders his own cooks. They prepare a pot of blood soup and a hard loaf of barley bread. Pausanias places it on the table next to the Persian feast. The contrast is stark. The black, unappetizing sludge of Sparta next to the culinary mastery of the East. Pausanias laughs. He gestures to the table. "Men of Greece," he says, "I brought you here to show you the folly of the Mede. Look at how he lived. Look at what he ate. And yet he came all the way to our poor, rocky land to rob us of this." He points to the barley bread. The commanders laugh. It is a moment of triumph. It is a reassertion of their values. We won because we are hard. They lost because they are soft. But the laughter is hollow, because as they look at the gold, as they taste the sweet wine, something changes in their eyes. They are seeing a world they didn't know existed, a world of comfort, a world of power that is not just about muscle, but about wealth. The victory at Plataea saves Greece. It preserves the concept of freedom, of the city-state, of democracy. But it also kills the innocence of the Greeks. They have touched the gold of the empire, and the gold has touched them back. Outside the tent, the body count continues. The Greeks strip the Persian dead. They argue over who killed whom. The Athenians claim they did the hardest work. The Spartans claim the glory of the kill. The Tegeans demand their share. The alliance, forged in fire, is already cooling and cracking. In the twilight, the battlefield is a landscape of horror. The bodies are stacked in heaps. The river Asopus runs red. The wolves are coming down from the mountains, drawn by the scent, and amidst the dead, a group of Plataeans, the locals whose city was destroyed, wander through the field. They are not looking for gold. They are looking for their land. They look at the blood-soaked earth that will need to be plowed. They look at the thousands of corpses that will need to be buried. They realize that the war is over, but the curse remains. The Greeks have defeated the Persians, but now they must survive themselves. The external threat is gone, leaving a vacuum that will be filled by ambition, by jealousy, and by the terrible memory of what men are capable of when the laws are suspended. Pausanias steps out of the tent. He looks up at the stars. He is the most powerful man in the world tonight. He is the savior of Hellas. But in his pocket, perhaps, his fingers brush against a Persian coin. He feels the weight of it. The war of spears is over. The war of the soul has just begun.
The burial parties work for days. They dig great pits in the soft earth near the river. They segregate the dead by city. The Spartans have their own tumulus, the Athenians theirs. The other Greeks are lumped together in a common grave. Even in death they are divided. They raise trophies, pillars of wood hung with Persian armor, to mark the spot of the victory. They dedicate a tenth of the spoil to the gods. They send a golden tripod to Delphi, inscribed with the names of the cities that fought. But if you look closely at that list, you see the erasures. You see the arguments carved in stone. Some cities are left out. Others bribe the priests to be added later. The lie of a unified Greece is being constructed before the bodies are even cold. And what of the enemy? Mardonius is buried. No one knows exactly where. Some say Pausanias ordered it out of respect. Some say a friend of Mardonius paid a bribe to have him interred secretly. His grave is lost to history. He becomes a ghost, a warning whispered to ambitious men. The remnants of his army, the few who escaped with Artabazus, limp back to Asia. They die of hunger, of disease, of attacks by Thracian tribes. The grand army that drank rivers dry is reduced to a skeleton. Xerxes, waiting in his palace in Susa, hears the news. He does not weep. He simply turns his back on the West. He withdraws into his harem, into his intrigues. He will never threaten Greece again. But he has left something behind. He has left the idea of empire. The Athenians look at the Persian fleet they captured at Mycale on the same day. They look at the gold in their ships. They look at the sea. They think, if the Persians could rule the world, why can't we? The Spartans look at Pausanias. They see him wearing Persian trousers in private. They see him eating off silver plates. They see the corruption taking root. They think, we must bring him home. We must lock the gates. The battle ends not with a handshake, but with a wary glance. The sun sets on the classical age's finest hour and rises on its long, slow unraveling. The ghosts of Thermopylae are quiet now. The debt is paid. But new ghosts are being born. Ghosts that will haunt the Peloponnesian War. Ghosts that will scream in the ruins of Athens 50 years from now. Victory is not a conclusion. It is merely a change of problems. The dust settles. The flies remain. In the days following the slaughter, the Greeks attempt to sanctify what they have done. Violence in the ancient mind is a kind of pollution. It stains the hands and the soul. To cleanse it, you need ritual. You need oaths. The army gathers one last time before it fragments. They stand on the battlefield, surrounded by the fresh mounds of the dead. The air is cooling as autumn approaches. They raise their hands and swear the oath of Plataea. It is a terrifying promise. They swear to defend freedom. They swear to bury their dead. But the most chilling clause is this. They swear never to rebuild the temples that the Persians burned.
They will leave the blackened ruins of the sanctuaries standing forever as a memorial to the impiety of the barbarian. It is a vow of eternal scar tissue. They want the landscape of Greece to scream forever, "Remember what happened here." But oaths are made by frightened men who believe they will feel the same way forever. They are wrong. Memory decays faster than stone. As the army breaks camp, as the Spartans march south and the Athenians march east, the unity of Plataea begins to evaporate. The fear of the Persian beast held them together. With the beast dead, the gravity is gone. The centrifugal force of Greek politics takes over. The first casualty of the peace is the man who won the war. Pausanias returns to Sparta not as a king, for he is still only a regent, but as a colossus. He has done what Leonidas could not. He has destroyed the invader. He walks the streets of Sparta, the unwalled collection of villages, and he feels too big for them. Sparta is a machine designed to suppress the individual. It fears greatness. Greatness destabilizes the phalanx. And Pausanias is now the greatest man in the world. He grows restless. He is sent north again to command the fleet, to chase the remnants of the Persians out of Byzantium. And there, far from the austere eyes of the Spartan elders, the rot sets in. He begins to dress in Persian robes. He dismisses his Spartan bodyguards and surrounds himself with Egyptian and Median soldiers. He demands to be addressed with the bowing rituals of an Oriental despot. The man who mocked the Persian feast is now ordering it for dinner every night. Rumors begin to drift back to Sparta. They say Pausanias is writing letters to Xerxes. They say he has offered to marry the great king's daughter and deliver Greece into his hands. They say the Savior has become a traitor. Is it true? Or is it the slander of smaller men jealous of his glory? History is ambiguous, but the behavior of Pausanias is the behavior of a man drunk on his own legend. He has looked into the abyss of absolute power, and he liked what he saw. The Spartan government, the ephors, recall him. They send a cytale, a coded message wrapped around a baton. "Come home," it says, "or be declared an enemy of the state." Pausanias returns. He believes he is untouchable. He relies on his bribes, his status, his victory. But he underestimates the cold, implacable nature of the state he served. The end of Pausanias is a horror story that rivals any Greek tragedy. The ephors find the proof they need, a letter entrusted to a slave who opened it because he noticed that none of the previous messengers ever returned. The slave takes the letter to the elders. The trap is set. Pausanias hears the whisper of the warrant. He is walking through the streets of Sparta when he sees the ephors approaching. He reads the intent in their eyes. The general, the hero of Plataea, turns and runs. He runs into the temple of Athena of the Brazen House. It is a sanctuary. By religious law, he cannot be touched inside. He cannot be dragged out. He cowers by the altar, breathing hard, thinking he has outsmarted them. The ephors do not drag him out. They do not violate the sanctuary. They simply call for masons. They brick up the doors. They stack heavy stones in the window gaps. They turn the temple into a tomb. And the legend says that Pausanias' own mother, an old Spartan matron, wordlessly picks up a brick and places it on the threshold, condemning her son for betraying the laws.
They peel off the roof to watch him die. For days, the hero of Plataea starves. He sits in the dark, dehydrated, listening to the sounds of the city he saved, going about its business outside. He dies not in battle, not in glory, but huddled in the corner of a cold room, a prisoner of the very piety he used to manipulate his army. Just before his heart stops, they drag him out, so his death does not pollute the temple. His body is buried in unhallowed ground. It is a grim lesson. The war saved Greece, but it destroyed the men who fought it. The trauma of the invasion, the exposure to the wealth of the East, the sudden expansion of horizons, it was too much for the rigid, archaic mind to handle. Pausanias is the first victim of the post-war world. But while Sparta turns inward, devouring its own, Athens turns outward. If Sparta is the tragic hero of this story, Athens is the opportunist. The Athenians look at the ruins of their city, the toppled columns, the ash-stained rock of the Acropolis, and they do not see an ending. They see a blank canvas. They have the fleet. They have the prestige of Salamis and the grit of the Plataean left wing. And they have a new idea. They form the Delian League. It begins as a mutual defense pact against Persia. "Give us money," Athens says to the island states, to the Ionians, "and we will build the ships to keep you safe." It sounds like an alliance. It becomes a racket. The treasury is kept on the sacred island of Delos. But soon the Athenians move the money to Athens. They stop asking for contributions and start demanding tribute. When the island of Naxos tries to leave the alliance, the Athenian fleet, the fleet built to save freedom, blockades them and forces them back into submission. The liberators have become the jailers. And what do they do with the money? They do not just build ships, they build the Parthenon. Look at that building today. It is the symbol of democracy, of Western art, of high culture. But look closer. It is built with stolen money. It is built with the tribute of subject states who were promised protection and given subjugation. It is a monument to hubris, constructed on the foundation of the Plataean victory. The oath to never rebuild the temples? Forgotten. The Athenians hire the greatest architects, the greatest sculptors. They scrub away the scorch marks of the Persian fire and replace them with white marble. They rewrite the narrative. In the new Athenian story, Sparta is a footnote. Athens is the shield of Greece. The victory at Plataea, which was won largely by Spartan spears, is slowly recontextualized as an Athenian triumph. This is the memory industry. In the decades following the battle, the war over the past becomes as vicious as the war on the plain. Every city wants to claim the credit. Every city wants to minimize the contribution of its rivals. The most famous monument to the battle is the Serpent Column. It is a twisted pillar of bronze, 3 intertwined snakes rising 25 feet into the air. It was forged from the melted-down weapons of the Persian dead, the swords, the breastplates, the gold. It was placed at Delphi, the center of the world, as an offering to Apollo. On the coils of the snakes, the names of the 31 Greek cities that fought are inscribed. You can still see this column today. It stands in the Hippodrome in Istanbul, moved there by a later emperor. It is green with age, broken, half buried in the pavement. But if you run your hand along the metal, you can feel the politics. The list of names is a hierarchy of honor. Sparta is first,
Athens is second. But look at the gaps. Some names are chiseled deeper than others. Some names were added later, bought with bribes. Some names, like the island of Tinos, were squeezed in at the last minute because they captured a single Persian ship.
And entire regions are missing. Thebes, Argos, Thessaly, the Medizers. They are erased from the honor roll of Hellas. They are branded as traitors forever. The monument is meant to show unity. In reality, it freezes the divisions of 479 BC in bronze. It tells us who belongs and who does not. It draws a line that will eventually lead to the next war, because the unity cannot hold. The Spartans look at the rising walls of Athens with suspicion. They hear the coins clinking in the Athenian treasury. They see the arrogance of the Athenian fleet. The long walls of Athens connect the city to the sea, making it immune to a land siege. To Sparta, this is an act of aggression. It negates the power of the Spartan army. The tension builds. The generation that fought at Plataea grows old. The veterans who remember standing shoulder to shoulder in the shield wall die off. Their sons do not remember the smell of the Persian camp. They only remember the insults of the other cities.
50 years after Plataea, the Peloponnesian War begins. It is a suicide pact. The Greeks turn the weapons they saved from the Persians against each other. They burn each other's farms. They slaughter each other's populations. They dismantle the civilization they fought so hard to save. And the irony? To win this civil war, Sparta eventually goes to the Persians. They ask the great king for gold to build a fleet to defeat Athens. They sell out the Ionian Greeks, the very people they liberated at Mycale, back to the empire in exchange for money. The cycle is complete. The victory of Plataea bought Greece 50 years of brilliance, and then the darkness returned, not from the east, but from within. But what of the place itself? Let us return to the plain of Boeotia. Let us walk away from the marble monuments in the history books and look at the earth. The land remembers what people forget. For centuries after the battle, the farmers of Plataea would find things in their fields. A bronze arrowhead working its way to the surface after a heavy rain. A skull crushed by a stone. A rusted iron fetter meant for a Greek slave. The people of Plataea held a festival every 4 years called the Eleutheria, the Freedom Festival. It was a solemn affair. There was a procession at dawn. Trumpets sounded the charge. A black bull was sacrificed to Zeus the Liberator, and the chief magistrate of the city, dressed in purple, would take a jar of wine and pour it onto the ground. He would speak to the dead. "I drink to the men who died for the freedom of the Greeks." It was a ritual of appeasement, because the dead were everywhere. Archaeology tells us the grim truth of the battle. We find the mass graves. They are not glorious. They are pits filled with jumbled bones. There are no names on these bones. We cannot tell which skeleton was a Spartan who died for duty, and which was an Athenian who died for democracy. We find the bones of the horses, still bearing the marks of the arrows. We find the layer of carbon in the soil that marks the burning of the Persian camp. But we also find something else. We find the silence. If you go to Plataea today, it is a quiet place. The modern village is small. The fields are yellow with wheat. The ridges where Pausanias wept and prayed are just rocky slopes where goats graze. There is no great museum there, No ticket booth. The tourists go to the Acropolis. They go to Thermopylae to see the statue of Leonidas. Plataea is forgotten. Perhaps that is fitting. Thermopylae is a story of beautiful failure. We love martyrs. We love the image of the doomed hero.
But Plataea? Plataea is a story of ugly success. It was messy. It was prolonged. It was won by a general who died a traitor. It ended in a massacre of prisoners. It does not fit the clean narrative of Western civilization. It is the dirty engine room of history. It is the place where the work was done so the statues could be built. And yet it is the most important field in Europe. If Mardonius had won that day, there would be no Parthenon. There would be no tragedies of Sophocles. There would be no dialogues of Plato. The concept of the citizen, of the man who votes, of the rule of law, all of it would have been strangled in the crib. The Persian Empire was not evil. It was magnificent. It was orderly. But it was a system of subjects, not citizens. The men who stood in the dust at Plataea, starving and arguing, preserved a different idea. They preserved the idea that a man belongs to his city, not to a king. They preserved the chaos of freedom. But they paid a terrible price. The final tragedy of Plataea is not what happened to the Persians. It is what happened to the Greeks. They learned that they could kill the most powerful army on earth. They learned that they were strong, and that strength made them arrogant. It made them believe they were invincible. It is the classic Greek tragedy. Hubris followed by ate, ruin. The generation of Plataea thought they had solved the problem of survival. They didn't realize that survival is not a solution, it is a condition. You survive the enemy, and then you have to live with yourself. As the sun sets over Mount Cithaeron today, the shadows stretch long across the valley. The wind blows through the olive trees. If you listen closely, you don't hear the clash of spears anymore. You don't hear the war cry of the immortals or the chant of the paean. You hear the silence of a graveyard that spans a continent. The ghosts of Thermopylae were answered. They were avenged. The debt of blood was paid in full. But the ghosts of Plataea are different. They do not ask for vengeance. They ask a harder question. They point to the ruins of Sparta and the ruins of Athens and the broken column in Istanbul. They ask, "We gave you the world. What did you do with it?" The story of the day the Greek allies slaughtered Mardonius's army is not a story of triumph. It is a story of the burden of victory. It is a reminder that when the drums stop beating and the adrenaline fades, the hardest war begins. The war against our own nature. And that is a war that has no final battle, no treaty, and no end.